Rochesters, looking at Monroe County and the city of Rochester through an equity lens can provide a startling view of the disparities in our community in areas that are really important to our quality of life: housing, health, education, employment, and others. In addition, looking at each of these Rochesters can provide an alarming picture of our poverty and its concentration. Our regional poverty is a primary factor in Rochester's problems and challenges, those that it's facing, both from a city, citizens, and our youth. And the concentration of poverty can really add significant challenges to our progress, both from a city standpoint, a region, and for the county. As you can see, the poverty rate in Rochester is 4 times that of our suburban Monroe County and 3 times that of our surrounding counties. You will also notice that the demographics in our 2 Rochesters are significantly different. As we look at racial positioning within our community, we see that the white population is more focused and living in the suburbs, and we have much more diversity of color in our city. Things are changing. Our demographics have changed from 2000 to 2012 in many different ways. We've seen movement from our city out into the suburbs, and we have seen general population of white people throughout the United States and our community decrease, while both our Asian, Hispanic, and Black populations have increased. As you can see, these numbers are pretty provocative. Monroe County suburbs have grown 244%, while the surrounding counties have grown an average of 50% each, and yet the city of Rochester has lost 37% of its population. When the white population leaves a city, it is often referred to as white flight. This happened since 1950 in Rochester. And at the same time, our Asian and African American and Hispanic population grew, the result of moving from migrating from different areas, and also some additional birth rates, higher birth rates, but slightly higher birth rates. You might ask, how do you look at these 2 things, and how do you revitalize a community that is so different from one area of Rochester to the other? And who can do it? Would it be politicians and business leaders? Average citizens? Church communities? Youth, we can't forget our youth. They're so important to our future. So how might we approach this? In a recent book called The Metropolitan Revolution, Bruce Katz and Jennifer Bradley have suggested that metropolitan areas around our country are dealing with their revolutions very uniquely. They're identifying their most pressing problems and addressing them for their community needs. So for instance, in Portland, Oregon, they are selling their sustainability solutions to cities around the world. And in Northeast Ohio, groups have taken industrial age skills and they have invented new 21st century materials, tools, and processes. So what might Rochester's pressing and important challenges and issues be? Could it be thriving families, affordable housing, successful youth and children? Or it could be multiple other things, but those are some of the primary areas where we have seen and probably will continue to see some challenges. So as we look at solutions to our most pressing problems, they must be integrated because these problems are much too large to be solved in silos. And we also know that they require leveraging our resources because we have limited resources. But there is no silver bullet and no simple remedy to improve quickly the fact that in the city of Rochester, our children living in poverty are at a 46% level. That is more than twice the rate of Monroe County, New York State, or the nation at 20%. And 4 times as many African American and Hispanic children live in poverty compared to their white counterparts in Monroe County. It is very important that we should not equate race and ethnicity with poverty. And yet, in our community, it appears that the correlation might be indisputable. The American dream, something we reference often, and we talk about having a better life than our parents and our grandparents. So home ownership is an important part of the American dream. We even promote our community as a very affordable place to live. And yet, half as many African Americans and Hispanics are homeowners compared to their white counterparts. And we have very limited affordable rental properties. In fact, if you look at the available units, more than 50% of those are in the city of Rochester. The federal government says we should not spend more than 30% of our household income on rent. In the city of Rochester, whites spend 34% of their income on rent, 47% for African Americans, and 50% for Hispanics. We do not provide much opportunity for our people living in poverty to become more wealthy and achieve the American dream by having an opportunity to be a homeowner. So if you're working and you're earning a good wage, shouldn't everyone be able to have affordable housing? But the rate of unemployment in Monroe County is 40% less than that in Rochester. And the unemployment rates for African Americans and Hispanics are 2 to 3 times those of whites. So we're providing a challenge in our community that is really a tough one to get past. But what breaks my heart is that Rochester babies are 2 times more likely to die than those babies who are living in Monroe County. Our infant mortality rate is really astonishing. And 4 times as many Hispanic and African American babies are more likely to die in their first year of life than those who are born to white families. So how are we helping our youth to be more successful? Especially when we know that twice as many 3rd graders in Monroe County pass their reading tests compared to those in Rochester City School District. The rates are 20% African American and Hispanic children pass 3rd grade reading, and 40% of white children in the city pass 3rd grade reading. The total for the Rochester City School District is 23%. It's a crisis. And why is it a crisis? It's a crisis because third grade is considered a pivotal point in the education process because our youth are expected to be able to read by third grade. And when our children can't read by third grade, then they can't read to learn as they progress further on in their education. So in addition to the 23% and the numbers I shared on the African American and Hispanic youth in third grade, the gap in 2012 went from a 10-point gap between those youngsters of color and their white counterparts, grew by 10 points. So we now have a 20-point gap. Pretty scary. So how then do we expect Rochester City School District to raise the graduation rates in an exponential way and in a short period of time when in many cases the basics of learning have not been established? Graduation from high school is extremely important. It allows us to position ourselves to move on for jobs and for other opportunities in higher education. So what might some potential solutions be? What have other communities done to look at the disparities between a metro area and their city? Raleigh, Nashville, Louisville have all chosen to change their government structures. Minneapolis has put in place a very creative revenue sharing plan. Larger cities like New York City, Washington, D.C., Boston, and Chicago have diversified their economies. And by diversifying their economies, they reduce their poverty. But even more important, they reduce their concentration of poverty. In Rochester, in our 82 census tracts, 1/3 of those reside 40% people of poverty. Let me say that again. 27 of our 82 sections of the city of Rochester have 40% poverty or above. So it's important for us to evaluate what we might do. And so far, in looking at these communities, they all take a different path on how they are working on their challenges. But the one thing they do is they align the resources that are identified to the problems that are in the metro area to take care of the whole, not just the part. So where do we go from here? How do we as a community look at what's next? The first question is, do we have the will to change? Are we willing to acknowledge that there are very different structures in the city of Rochester and Monroe County, our two Rochesters? And if we are, the way to proceed is to learn as much as we possibly can about what's happening in our community. Because only with a key understanding will we be able to generate the support from our community to make real change, real and systemic change. I would ask you all to please learn about the issues. Learn about what's happening in our community. There are many, many opportunities, resources, and sources. I would invite you to check out ACT Rochester at actrochester.org to learn more about our issues. I'd also suggest you connect with others. I used to say connect with like-minded people, but you know what? I think it's really important that we connect with people who are not only like-minded, but maybe differ in their views, so that we get a broader perspective of what our community is dealing with and what potential solutions might be. You know, when an orchestra plays and does a profound performance, many of the different pieces, whether they be percussion or strings or horns, have met individually. But in order to have that knockout production, they have to come together. So by connecting, we come together to be able to take action, action that is sustainable and real and important to the future of our community. Thank you.